Hi, it's Nicole with Simple Stories today, and I've got a full-size photo focus type of double page layout today. These photos are from a senior photo session that I did for my nephew, probably, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago, and I had not scrapbooked them yet. This, for me, is why I personally like not scrapping in chronological order and why I like to jump around. When I first received the Simple Vintage Woodlands pack, I wasn't sure what I was going to use it for. The area that I live in is not very woodsy. We are also not very outdoorsy type of people. So I had kind of limited options. I found some hiking photos, but they were more like desert landscape. They just kind of didn't fit the vibe of Woodlands. And then I remembered that my sister and I had gone up to our like closest mountain range here and did his photo session kind of in this wood area. So I felt like this was going to be a good option. Now, with something like senior photos or like family sessions, kind of those photo sessions where you know you're going to have a lot of just really good photos and you're going to have a hard time deciding, which ones to use. I knew I didn't want to exceed a single layout for this, but I still wanted to use full-size photos. So I kind of combed through some inspiration and some files and looked for a sketch that would allow for a lot of photos. I think I found one that was focused on 12 photos for the page and did a little bit of modifying to kind of fit what I had. What was nice about the sketch that I ended up following was by switching the full-size 4x6 photos to 3x5s, you're able to get more kind of on this collage area without losing a lot of what's going on in the photos. Especially knowing that a lot of these I took with that kind of photography aspect ratio where you're kind of lining the subject up on like thirds, if that makes sense. Like where he's in the hoodie, he's over on the third of the frame. So a lot of times there's open areas and there's gaps and there's, buildings or trees or something kind of going on behind the subject that you can crop out pretty easily. Now, typically when I am doing one of these layouts where you've kind of got this large photo area, it's kind of wallpapered, I like to pull back a little on the paper choices. So I actually pulled these two map prints from the Coordinating Basics pattern papers, where one side you've got a subtle map and the other side is a like solid, which is a little bit of a texture to it. And these are what I'm going to use for the background of my layout. And then I used the darker brown one to matte all of the photos on the right-hand side. And then I'm going to use another sheet to kind of matte everything else that's going on the left-hand side of this layout. The sketch also had this really nice area where you're using strips of pattern paper to kind of frame in to vertical oriented 4x6 photos. So I pulled out the 6x8 pattern paper pad because it's already sized to that 8-inch width. And this was where kind of small pieces of paper can really pull a larger load design-wise. By being able to pull in things like the greens, that little pop of blue, that little pop of red, this is going to help kind of bridge the gap between this rust color and this brown color and my photos, which are taking up the majority of the landscape here. These little strips of paper are going to, provide a way to kind of bridge the designs between maybe the boring papers and photos and the more interesting embellishments. I felt like these little pieces of pattern paper were just going to be perfect for this, because if I just did like one piece of pattern paper here to kind of matte these photos and the area where I'm going to put embellishments, If anything, I'm only bringing in, one, maybe two more colors in here. And the embellishments really showcase all of the colors that are included in Woodlands. You've got those reds and those pops of blue. You've got the different colors of greens. So I kind of felt like if I, without these strips, bringing in those little pops of color, I was worried that the embellishments would kind of look like they didn't belong. Not that they didn't belong, but they just kind of, all of the sudden they're bringing in these colors. So these strips here just kind of really, to me, brought in a lot of interest. Now, the sketch did have this really cool kind of vertical border that was made out of like ticket tags. Instead of that, which I don't think there was any tickets in the Woodlands collection, I kept going back to this pattern paper. When I did my unboxing, I commented on this a couple times. I love this pattern. I think it is so unique. And I decided to go ahead and cut out a bunch of the little Polaroids from the 6x8 version of this print. And I'm going to use them to build that border on the right hand side. And then I'm also going to make sure to include them in the clusters on the left hand side so that everything kind of ties in. I went with the Sentiment Bits die cut pack and pulled out some phrases. With this layout, I didn't do any journaling. It's one of those things where I feel like if I go back and do journaling, more than likely I will just tuck it on the back of the layout. With stuff like this, it's more, in my mind, more like photo album type scrapbooking. If this was a senior session of one of my kids, I probably would include the journaling on there. This is my nephew, so I didn't didn't want to publicly put that stuff out there. And I didn't want to just put like so-and-so's senior session. So I did kind of leave myself a little opening in the embellishing that if I want to come in with like a label to include like the location and the date, and then I can come back in and kind of just talk about, where he's at in his life at that point, kind of where he's looking at future-wise and stuff like that. I can put that, like, tuck it in or slice behind the photos and add a tag, like have it where you can pull it out or something. So if you're wondering why the end result doesn't have journaling, that's why. It was one of those things where it was like, one, I'm not in the headspace to kind of have a sentimental style journaling session right now. And again, I wanted the focus to be on all of these like full size photos from his senior session. I also grabbed, I think it was from, I will link it down below. It's one of the die cut packs that has these really cool, almost like pre-made layered cluster type things. I took one of them and like cut it in half and basically made myself like little mats to put the smaller photos on. I brought in that circular one. I really liked just kind of how that broke up all of the like straight edges of everything. Again, I'm using those little Polaroids that I cut to include. And then the title, I just went super simple and put Hello Adventures. To me, that really kind of represented the fact that, one era of his life is wrapping up and he's kind of got, the adventure of all of life ahead of him at this point. So sometimes I like just a simple title that isn't super specific to the theme. Like I could have, die cut letters and done, so-and-so senior session or something like that. In this case, I just really liked kind of the nod to the adventures of life, that are upon you in this stage of your life. I think I picked out almost every single one of these little hearts that was also in I think it might be the sentiment pack. I think at this point I've got the sentiment pack open, the ephemera pack open. I was just kind of digging through everything. The little blank labels, I loved. Cut a bunch of those in half so that I could kind of stretch them a little bit. And then there were these little, I don't know if they're like stamps or what, but they were really good for layering as well. I got the majority of the embellishing that I wanted to have over on the left, and then I'm going to go ahead and move over to the right-hand side. As I'm assembling stuff, I'm starting to realize that my margin here is not going to be big enough. If I'd thought about it, I could have cut down all of those photos on the right, like the top two, I could have taken probably an inch off the right. The bottom two, I could have taken an inch off the left and had it be 3x4s, and then given myself a little bit wider of an area over here. But instead of doing that, my solution was to have this border basically just hang off the edge. And I really liked the end result of this. I feel like it mimics that kind of like messy, clustery vibe that's going on the left-hand side, is kind of brought over here just with the repeated Polaroids and in a more vertical orientation. And then I'm using things like the labels and those little like stamps, that border piece, to bring in the colors that were from those little pattern paper strips as well. Because again, up until this point, this side just has those two tone on tone patterns and all of these photos. I am coming back in with, again, more of these little hearts. These little hearts, I swear, they're like my favorite thing in all of the Simple Vintage lines. They're always this same shape. They come in every color that you see within the papers. They're too cute. So I'm going to cluster some of these and mix them in and just kind of see if I can find, little things here and there to help bring in some more color and just kind of fill in this border here. And I like to just kind of dump the die cut packs out into like a tray like this, do a quick sort when I'm working on things, and then when I'm coming back and like really embellishing and bringing in details, that's kind of when I really start digging and looking for specifics. With large photo blocks like this, I do like to come in and add either like labels, phrase stickers, just kind of something to have the photos feel like they tie into all the other textures and elements going on. And sometimes just a simple phrase sticker on an open area of a photo can really just kind of help everything tie in together. So with that, my layout is complete. I've got my photos here. This is also up on the Simple Stories blog today. So if you want a kind of written version of this or to see the photos for a little bit longer, head on over there. I will link everything down below. And if you could give me a thumbs up if you liked this video, subscribe if you have not. Most of my views are not subscribed. I thought that was kind of interesting. And hopefully one of these suggested videos you have not seen yet. And I will catch you guys later. Bye.